The Paper Bag, Chapter 6.
Eddie threw a thick black jumpsuit at me and some gloves. "Why are you called a leatherback drake?"
Males don't have scales, just a thick hide.
He held out his arm. I pinched it to see how thick it was. "It's not any thicker than mine."
It changes when I'm a dragon.
He snickered at my confused expression. I turned my back to him because it felt weird to undress in front of someone I really didn't know. I hurried to dress myself. The suit fit more like a wetsuit. I struggled to pull it on over my shoulders and stick my hands into the sleeves. To make it fit better, I pulled and tugged on the material to adjust it under my arms and crotch. "I hope this isn't a dream," I whispered. The thought of seeing my parents again had my mind in a whirl. It was hard to concentrate on anything Eddie was saying to me.
Don't put those gloves on until we land. The suit is designed to keep you warm.
"But I don't get cold."
You don't?
Eddie stuck his face in mine.
That's cool. When I get cold, I slow down. It makes it hard to fight.
"Well, I don't know how to fight. My dad didn't like that."
I never met your dad. When they kicked my sister out of the clan, I was too little.
"How old are you?"
30.
"How long have you been a fire spitter?" Eddie looked offended. "Well, I don't know what it's called."
It's more like hacking up a big slime ball. Then before it all leaves your throat, you spark and the whole thing catches fire. Give yourself 6 years and you'll love it.
Eddie laughed, probably at my expression again. "It sounds gross." I slipped on my shoes. Eddie put on a black vest that looked very thick to me. Probably some type of body armor. It had buckles on the side to hold it in place over his t-shirt. I tugged on it. "Aren't you a little overdressed?"
This armor expands with my body if I need more movement. We are going in fully shielded because they know we are coming.
"I'm sure Henry told them to duck and cover."
That lawyer is more interested in himself. His only focus is on money.
My eyes grew big. What if they want more dragons and this is all a trap?
Humans aren't smart enough to think of something like that.
His words hurt because I still considered myself a human. My gut had a sinking feeling that this would go bad. Even I could see that their pride would be an antecedent to their failure and maybe the death of my parents all over again. I grabbed my gym bag and stuffed the only clothes I had into it. They were dirty, but if I needed to blend in, they would come in handy. To steady my nerves, I took in a big breath and let it out again before following Eddie out the door. It was raining hard when we headed out to the helicopter. I watched 6 dragons, including Eddie, get into it. All of them dressed in black from head to toe. Frank put a big hand on my shoulder.
"You are sitting in the cockpit with me."
"You mean I'm not part of the mission?" I was unhappy about that, but at the same time relieved.
"You are going only to comfort your mother. That's if we find her."
This time when we flew, I was awake for the entire trip. We hovered over the top of JP Pharmaceutical in Chicago and everyone got out, but me and Frank. We landed on a building close by.
"Here, Jack."
Frank handed me night vision binoculars. They were military grade. I watched them go into the building and listened to their conversations. They didn't say much, and I lost visual after they climbed into the elevator. To keep from dying of boredom, I scanned the windows of neighboring buildings. But nothing exciting was happening unless you enjoy watching people watch TV. The wait was brutal, so I kept looking. After about 30 minutes of listening to them search, I looked over at Frank. "Have you been playing games on your phone all this time?" He just nodded, too enthralled to say anything. "I never took you for a gamer. You must get to sit and wait a lot." He nodded again. "You aren't much of a talker either."
"Not really."
He gave me a quick look.
"When this is all over, I will show you my game room."
"Sweet," I said and held out my fist for a bump. He left me hanging. We talked about games we both liked until we noticed all the radio chatter was gone. Then a voice came on the speaker.
"If you want to see your lawyer, we are willing to trade for the boy or the baby. I think it's more than a generous trade."
I recognized the voice immediately. It was Henry, my JP Pharmaceutical lawyer. Holding the binoculars to my eyes, I scanned the rooftop. I saw Eddie standing with several armed men and Henry in the middle of them. Eddie had both hands on his throat. "This isn't good," I said, handing the binoculars to Frank. "What are we going to do?" I am not sure if Frank is smart or not, but he seemed to be struggling to formulate a plan. "Call Aunt Cass," I finally said. He fumbled with his phone. "Just exchange me for Eddie so I can at least be with my mother." I remembered that Eddie had put a tracking device on me, and he didn't remove it. Frank got on his phone and turned his back to me so he could have a private conversation. The person on the other end was yelling so loud I knew it was my aunt. She was not going to be happy with me either. I opened the door as quietly as I could and slipped out of the helicopter. Now how was I going to get their attention? Whistle. The thought came to me. So I stuck my fingers into my mouth and let out a loud shrill sound that echoed off the buildings around us. Then I stood on the edge and waved my hands. Henry saw me, and with a wave of his hand a couple of men took off to come get me. All of a sudden I was grabbed from behind and held so tightly that I could hardly breathe. Torn shirt sleeves rested on both green arms that held me a foot above the ground. My Uncle Frank growled as he spun around and ran me back to the helicopter. When I was strapped in my seat, he came around to his side, changing back into the Frank I knew as he went. Frank was a beast of a dragon. Much taller than Eddie, and I wondered what his skills were, because he didn't seem to do much except cook and fly the helicopter. We took off heading right for the roof of JP Pharmaceutical. Eddie turned to look at us and grinned as he shifted into a dragon. Henry kept his men at bay, hoping we were going to make a trade. So, you're going to trade me? I must admit I was kind of disappointed, even though it was what I wanted.
No! I'm picking up Eddie.
We flew low as though we were going to land. Then Eddie gave a quick swipe of his tail, knocking the gunmen off their feet. Bullets flew everywhere, pinging off the glass as if it was made of metal. It had me ducking with my head between my legs. The helicopter dipped to the side sharply, and then we were off, soaring high into the sky. The back door opened, and Eddie the human climbed in.
Why didn't you fry those guys?
Frank hissed as soon as Eddie had the door closed.
I couldn't. They hit me with a dart and my throat tightened so I couldn't spit.
Eddie cocked a smile at me. His voice was much softer than usual. This was all fun and games to him. I wondered if I would be like him someday.
Did you get a sample for me?
Yes.
Eddie pulled a dart out of his shoulder with red streamers coming out of the end. He twisted it in his fingers.
I guess all of their studying of us paid off.
Eddie's voice already sounded clearer.
We better hope that they don't discover that we become immune easily.
What about the others? I twisted in my seat to look back at the building.
I saw a flash down there, to your right.
I held the binoculars to my eyes. The rest of the team was standing on a building about a mile from where we dropped them off. We came close, and then they spread their featherless wings without shape-shifting and flew to meet us. The force from the helicopter blades gave them some trouble, but they acted as if they had done this before. Eddie opened the door as they entered one by one.
It's freezing out there.
Eddie handed out heavy winter coats to them before putting one on himself. Aren't we going home?
No, we are going to Paris.
Do we have enough fuel to do that?
We are switching flying machines.
The others just looked tired and kept quiet. Why are we going to Paris?
They moved your mother there.
One of the women in the back said.
Didn't you tell the kid this was a reconnaissance mission?
It was need to know, and he didn't need to know, Helen.
There were daggers in Eddie's voice, as if she shouldn't have said anything. Is my mother alive? The words came out shaky because I was afraid of the answer.
She is. They moved her so she could get specialized treatment. We didn't get any intel on your father, though.
Eddie protested with a sigh and threw his hands in the air. The weird thing about this conversation is that we heard each other clearly even through the loud whirl of engine, as if I heard their voices in my head. I had talked to my mother before like this, but it seemed so natural that I never gave it a second thought until now. And how did everyone here as a group? It must be a dragon-to-dragon thing. This thought filled my head as we landed in New York. With my uncles by my side, we walked to a small jet plane and climbed the stairs into it. Eddie showed me to my seat while Frank and Helen went to the cockpit. I could see from one end of the plane to the other. It was just beginning to snow. I watched the white flakes drift slowly by my window. A woman sat across from me and Eddie. A table filled the space between us.
Hey, Eddie, do you want to play cards?
He arched an eyebrow at her before saying,
You cheat.
I don't cheat. You just don't like losing.
She smiled at me.
How about you?
She was using the voice on me. I could feel it. I narrowed my eyes at her. I know what you're doing, and it doesn't work on me. She clicked her tongue at me.
That's too bad.
Her skin color changed from black to a dark skin tone, and she started to leave. I didn't say I wouldn't play. I just don't like the way you asked.
Sorry about that.
She looked at me apologetically and began shuffling the deck. Another woman joined us. Her skin was white as the snow outside. My name is Jack, I said, hoping they would give me theirs.
I'm Skunk.
The one dealing said.
I'm April.
I'm Eddie.
My uncle said sarcastically and gestured to himself.
Deal me in.
How did you get the name Skunk?
My parents gave it to me. I projected black and white stripes when I was born. It reminded my mother of a skunk.
She shrugged.
Yeah, and it fits you perfectly.
Eddie watched Skunk's every move. Either he had a thing for Skunk or she really did cheat.